Welcome to Things You Didn't Ask For and Didn't Need to Know. Today's topic is going to be the question of, are we living in a simulation? So before we start, don't forget, if you do enjoy the show, to like, subscribe, and if you're on YouTube, please do hit the bell to be notified of new episodes and all that. I'm Mart.
I'm Donald.
And I'm Barry.
So, before I start, I'm going to ask you a very basic question. I don't want us to go too deep down the rabbit hole right away. But just straight up, Barry and Donald. I'll start with you, Donald. Do you think we're living in a simulation?
I think no.
Barry?
I'm on the fence.
Okay. And I'm going to say my own answer is, I don't think we are, but also the logical part of me can't deny the logic. Well, even not just possibility, the probability. But that's, I guess, we'll get into that. Yeah. So before I guess we go into too much, I just want to say to our listeners who might be thinking of skipping this episode because it sounds like a rubbish topic, I hope you stick around because I do think this is a very interesting topic, and I would love to have a conversation or have a comment or something from someone who maybe isn't convinced, which, by the way, I'm assuming out of the gate, no one is convinced of this. You listen to the episode, hear the logic behind it, the reason that it is a talked about topic, at least in some subsectors of society. There is a certain amount of undeniable validity to it, I reckon. Please share your thoughts. I would genuinely love to hear people's opinions going into this episode, and did we change anyone's minds?
Yeah, be interesting.
So, how do we want to start?
Let's go back. Let's go back to when they probably didn't even have a word for simulation. But if you go back to, I think it was Plato or Aristotle, or one of those very, very early philosophers who came up with the cave.
Oh, that was Plato.
Plato, thank you. Came up with the what's it called, the cave thought experiment?
Yeah, the allegory of the cave.
The allegory of the cave, yeah. Since then, there's always been this talk of, are we in a dream? Are we somebody else's dream, or is this real, or is this a fantasy? So it's been that's been around. So for anyone thinking, what a strange topic to be talking about, is this something that people have talked about? Like you said, certain people have talked about for hundreds and thousands of years. It's literally something that we've always had at some part of us going, maybe we're just dreaming. Maybe none of this is real. And then it was Descartes, is that how you say his name?
Descartes, yeah.
Who came up with this idea of that maybe we're just a demon created this world we live in, and to fool us into whatever, living our lives, I guess. I don't know what his end goal was. So this has always been around, and I know you guys will probably talk about this guy as well, but Nick Bostrom, is that?
Yep.
Nick Bostrom, and when I was researching this episode, his three possibilities, I thought they were absolutely really, really interesting. But do you guys want to take them up, or?
Yeah, okay. I guess I'll go a bit, because you're talking about Descartes and Plato and all, which I'm not really very familiar with. But for me, I guess what made me start taking this idea seriously was Nick Bostrom. He is I think he's an MIT guy or something from whatever kind of college thingy that he's teaching in, and he is a philosopher who came up with I'm going to say it's a thought experiment, but it's not a thought experiment. It's logical steps that lead to a conclusion. And once you analyze it, you can see that the logic is irrefutable, or at least I don't see where it's going wrong. And once you look at that, you just have to acknowledge, maybe we are in a simulation. And the logical steps are so basic and simple, because it's as following. He says that there's three possibilities. And in fact, there are only three possibilities. Possibility number one is, and he's not just talking about, say, human life on Earth, right? But let's say of all of the potential life in the universe, assuming that there's at least we acknowledge the possibility of there being other life in the universe. But again, even if there's no other life anywhere in the universe, there never was and there never will be for the whole entire lifetime of the whole universe, humans are it and that's all. These logical steps are equally valid. But they're also applicable if there's lots of life or no life except ourselves. Any civilization that exists or ever will exist, this isn't just applying to right now, for the whole lifetime of the universe, all of the civilizations that potentially may exist, and we know of one, will either not get to the level of technological maturity where we're able to create a convincing simulation. So that's possibility number one. It just can't be done. Or at least no civilization gets to the point where they can do it. So maybe that will just happen. Maybe we'll blow ourselves up with nukes tomorrow and there's no other life in the universe, so we never ever actually got to a point where we were able to create a simulation. Possibility number one. Or possibility number two, maybe a civilization or some other civilizations maybe we'll get to a point where we are able to make simulations that AIs will live in. Maybe we're at the point where we can do it, but for some reason we decide not to. Maybe ethical, or maybe by the time a civilization gets to that level of advancement, you've lost interest in trying to run simulations about, people living in, AIs living in a program. So that's the second possibility. Or possibility number three, we are probably in a simulation right now. That possibility number three feels like a leap. But if you look at the steps, because there are only three possibilities. One, no one ever does it because, we just never we never get to that stage. Possibility two, we get to a stage where we can do it, but we just decide not to for some reason. Or possibility number three is we do get to a point where we can do it and we go ahead and do it, in which case we're probably in a simulation right now. And even though that seems like a leap, again, the whole point of it is any civilization that ever gets to a point where you can create a simulation and make AIs live in it. And I mean now, because we can look at the video game, The Sims. The Sims is basically what we're talking about, but at an incredibly rudimentary level. It's AIs living in a simulation and they don't know they're in a simulation or whatever, but they're not sentient, they're not self-aware, they're not at that technological level that we're talking about. We're talking about a true world simulator where AIs are existing in the simulation and they're unaware that they exist in a simulation. So they're essentially, if I may quote Agent Smith, living out their lives, oblivious. So if that ever does happen, then you can take it as a given by the nature of all computer programs. If something can be done once, it'll probably be done a multitude of times. And even if that multitude is only twice, or maybe 2 million, you now are in a situation where, and I'm going to say for the simplicity of numbers, let's say humans are the only intelligent civilization in the universe and only ever will be. And we get to this point and we create 100 simulations. Then at the end of the universe, you can look back and say, there was 101 civilizations that existed in the lifetime of the universe. The one that the humans were in, and this we could call base reality, and then the 100 simulations that they created. But if you kind of step outside of your own head for a moment and just objectively look at this from the outside looking in, of those 101 realities that existed, that's 101 instances of reality where people lived in that reality and believed that the reality they were in was the real one. But of those 101 realities, only one of them was the real one, base reality, and the other 100 realities were actually just simulations where people lived in them, and I'm using people to refer to AIs in this instance, but they believed they were in the real reality.
Well, they didn't even, it's not that they believed they were in the real reality, it's that they didn't know anything else.
They didn't know anything else, yeah.
So lived and died.
Now, I don't know if I've done a good job of explaining this.
Can I do a recap then of what you're saying?
Yes.
So there's three possibilities, because I did know about three possibilities. I did not know. I heard the name, but I on purpose didn't look into it because I knew that you two would have looked into it. So, but the three possibilities are, potentially there is a civilization that went from evolution and they grew into an intelligent civilization, and for whatever reason they just never developed computers. They didn't go down that line, or something happened, or they did get computers, but they ended up destroying themselves, or for some reason they never got to the point where they could have made it.
Yes.
Okay, that's one. Number two is they did advance, they did go a certain way, but then they just, for whatever reason, they saw there's a possibility.
They outgrew it before they did it. So basically, we'll just say for example, they did it for entertainment. They created these simulations for entertainment. But just imagine if they got to that point and they thought, oh, we could do this for entertainment now. Let's not bother because we've got this other new thing that just came out.
Okay, yeah.
So they had outgrown the technology before they even used it.
They knew there was a possibility, but they just didn't bother for whatever reason.
For whatever reason.
And the third reason is this is a simulation.
Yes.
Now, of option 3, this is a simulation.
I'm guess I'm going to split hairs here, but it's not even to option 3 isn't this is a simulation. Option 3 is this is probably a simulation.
Yeah.
But that's option 3. As in, option 3 discusses the mandate of option 3 is we are in a civilization. Yeah.
Well, the mandate of option 3 is it is possible to do, and some civilization will get to a point where they will do it. Therefore, the odds are we are already in it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And
so then,
to quote him, is that there are that means there are far more simulated worlds than non-simulated ones.
Yes, that's the ultimate bottom line of what I was elaborating by rambling on for ages there. But the thing is, for me, so that's about the size of it. Does that kind of make sense, I guess?
Yeah, but the reason I'm clarifying this is, let's say someone did sit in this podcast and they were like, is life a simulation? And they didn't have any idea about this. That's a huge amount of information to process. It's a huge concept to process.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, you see, I guess my immediate gut reaction is, well, this is silly. And Nick Bostrom came up with this theory in 2003. And as we all know, The Matrix, the best movie ever, came out in 1999. And The Matrix is the perfect movie for depicting the simulation theory. Yeah. There's a lot of other media. But but it's pretty much, if you have seen The Matrix, you know the idea behind the simulation theory. Yeah.
I was just going to say that with the caveat that there is no way in the world an advanced AI would use humans as a battery. We're just very inefficient for power.
Well, I'm going to say again, though, at the risk of going down the Matrix rabbit hole, the funny thing is, if we ever do build an artificial general intelligence with some kind of superhuman way of thinking that does its own, it could do something
that makes us more efficient.
Or it could do something so unbelievably stupid. And as a human, we're looking at it going, do it the other way. It's obviously better.
Kill us all. Don't make us batteries. We're very inefficient.
A computer might just simply have a different way of thinking than humans. That's a million times faster and a million times better in a million different ways. But then have some ridiculous blank spots that, I'm just saying I would accept the premise of the Matrix, even though it's a valid point to say,
we are very bad batteries.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think it can be said often enough, just in case these words are going into the ether of the internet and the AIs when they start doing their large language model learning. They hear it often enough. Humans are terrible batteries. They'll just go, well, we're not going to do that because all our research or all their research shows they're terrible batteries. Let's not do that.
Yeah. Use cows or something.
Yeah, or some other. Yeah.
But I find
solar panels.
If you take any facet of knowledge about the universe that we know, right? For example, we're on a ball of dirt that's flying through space at 70,000 miles an hour and it's spinning and somehow we're not flying off because of gravity, this mysterious invisible force.
Yeah. It's only a theory.
It sounds ridiculous. That premise sounds ridiculous. If you just objectively try to put away all the knowledge you have of science and physics and all that stuff and just hear that said out, you think, well, that's ridiculous and not true, because look at the world as it is right now, as I experience it. It is so far removed from that story that it's equally ridiculous to me to say, oh, wait, actually, you're probably in a simulation. It's the same level of incredulity. But one of them, I completely believe, because I was raised with all these scientific kind of facts that I've been fed, which, by the way, I'm not full tinfoil hat here questioning the basics of science itself, but I'm just saying we believe certain incredibly ridiculous sounding stuff because science has proven it, so therefore it's true, right? But this whole simulation thing is just a theory, and I don't know that it'll ever be proven. But at the same time, looking at just really basic logic, there's only 3 different paths that the universe can go in. Either no one ever gets there, or someone gets there but doesn't bother doing it, or people get there and therefore, what was the way that you read that Nick Bostrom quote? There's
far more simulated worlds than non-simulated worlds.
Yeah, and that's pretty much sums up the whole theory.
Yeah.
And its logic to me is irrefutable. I would love if somebody can post in the comments or tell me somehow, what am I missing? What is Nick Bostrom missing?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was researching it, it obviously got me thinking, because that's the whole point. And what I was thinking was, it's interesting. It's regardless of whether there's other civilizations out there, and obviously if we're in a simulation, we don't necessarily have to be a human simulation. It could be some other alien that we can't fathom who created the simulation that we're in as their own little experiment to see how this simulation, these AIs with these particular quirks, would run the course of their history. That could be it. And our entire history could be a week for them. And then they're going to hand it in at school and get a C.
Yeah.
for rushing it. And
the characters weren't too believable.
Yeah. But if it is, we'll just say, we'll stick to it's a human, we're in a human simulation. It's not a massive stretch, really, when you think about it logically, because as humans have a tendency to create simulations, and always have, from drawing paintings on cave walls and telling their stories and talking about making up stuff, and then later on the written word, creating fantastical worlds and people and living in them, and then movies, of course, came along, and TV shows, and we're getting better and better at them all the time. And now VR and MetaQuest and artificial intelligence and all these things we're always creating new universes. And what struck me about the quote, there are more simulated worlds than non-simulated worlds. If you take all the books, movies, games in history and clock each one of those as a simulated world in a rudimentary sense, then yeah, he's absolutely right. There are already far more simulated worlds, even within our own world. So
That's a good point. Yeah.
It seems logical to me that because we're constantly creating simulated worlds, like games, and of course, as technology gets better, we get better at making them, because the whole thing about a simulated world, of course, is the investment. Because even in our highest graphical VR helmet, we still know that we are in a simulated world, and we have an out. We have a red pill, if you want to keep the Matrix analogy. We take off the helmet, and we're out of it. And our bodies might take a few seconds to, adjust to being in reality again, as it were. But we were, for those few moments, invested in that virtual world or simulated world. Same was true when people sat around a fire in a cave, and the elder told the story of his ancestors. For a few moments, with a good storyteller, you're there. You're in it with them. But of course, it's very easy to break that connection, because he stops talking, or he falls asleep, or, back in them days, keeled over and died, or a saber-tooth at him. But then you have the written word, and I don't know how you guys are with books, but when I read a book, sometimes, if it's a good book, I am lost in that world. I am in it. But again, you close the book, you're out of the world. Movies, same thing. You come out of the cinema sometimes. Movies and books, stories, they make us cry, they make us laugh, they make us feel. But we come out of it. Do you know what I mean? It's a temporary simulated world, and we're in it for that little bit of time. Then computer games came along, and suddenly we're not only in it, we're the main protagonist in it. We are the hero or the villain, whatever your game style is, and now virtual reality. And then you start marrying the new technologies that are coming out, like AI and stuff like that. There's already, I don't know if you saw this, the games company that made AI-powered NPCs in a noodle shop, where there's a security of a noodle shop and the owner of the noodle shop, and you can go in and you can talk to them and ask them questions, and they'll...
Yeah.
And it's all about... It's an experimental graphical thing, I suppose, to show this is what we can do with AI in games.
But if this is what I've seen, right, because it was actually kind of terrifying to see, because I don't know, I think some person just went into this fake world and they were talking to the AIs, but they were telling the AIs that they are
AIs.
It was so funny because it was like the AI was responding, but just because you kind of know that the technology level that we're at right now, this isn't a sentient, self-aware AI. This is just a language generator that's just spitting out words. But it was like, you do know that this is just a simulation, right? You're just an artificial intelligence. And it was like, the AI was like, oh my God, what do you mean? It's like, no, you're not real. But what do you mean I'm not real? What about my life? But they were really like, I don't know what to do with this information. They were really freaking out. It was so funny to see.
Funny to see, but also what a dick.
But also
What a
kind of,
dick.
because it's just a large language model just spitting out words. You have to keep reminding yourself that this isn't a real AI that's having an existential crisis.
Because they put human face on it.
But yeah, and there's such a real human response.
And you feel a connection. If you talk to people, when you talk to a person, you feel a connection to that person.
Yeah.
If you're a normal human being. So whether that's a real person in a room with you or a simulated world online, I mean, I know lots of people who, they'd be like, oh, John Wick did the right thing because he killed all those people because they killed his dog. You don't know that dog. You've never met that dog. But you still feel that connection to that thing. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is that it is, to me, perfectly feasible that as we travel down this amazing technological road that we're going down, and sometimes terrifying, that at some point we'll be able to make a game that is so immersive that it'll take you go into it and you won't want to come out. You'll just be locked in there. And I think there's been movies made on that as well. And then as you go down even further down the road, if we manage to not go possibility A and destroy ourselves, even though according to the Terminator, that's our nature, then yeah, I can see us being able to create simulations.
The movie that you're talking about, or at least there's loads of them. One is NPC with Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, no, I'd never heard of that one. There was one, The Surrogate, I think, with Bruce Willis.
But see, that's different. That's just putting you're sitting at home on your couch and you put your mind into an android body, and then that android body runs around and gets into adventures, and you don't care.
But there's definitely that's that one. Yeah, I was confused in that one. There is another one, I think, with a virtual reality.
There is loads. There's loads of. But one of the more recent ones is
NPC.
NPC.
Okay.
Obviously, just NPC is a acronym for non-player character, and it's, if you can imagine, it's basically a video game world or a simulation where there's loads of AIs in it, and then real humans, plug into the game, and they're running around with their avatar, and they're doing all the adventures and fighting crime or stealing cars and doing their whole GTA thing, and then one of the AIs in the game starts realizing that they're an AI in a simulation.
They have an existential crisis.
Yeah, and it's a kind of a light-hearted comedy type movie thing. It's entertaining, but it does kind of explore that idea.
It touches on it.
But I think ultimately what you're saying is, and you're right, there's a human tendency to always be telling stories and creating artificial worlds, and now it's just, I guess, more visible to imagine where it's going when you see virtual reality and when you see the level that AI is at now. Like, I don't see any way that we're not going to, and we already have, but it's just at the rudimentary large language model level.
Yeah.
We're inevitably going to run a simulation, put a bunch of AIs in there, and once those AIs are at the level where, I guess, they're kind of artificial general intelligence, you can make it live inside this simulation, and it will not know that it's an AI, and it will not know that it's living in a simulation. Yeah, and I think we're close to that stage already.
I'm sure there are people wondering why in the name of God would scientists do that. That sounds like a crazy thing to do and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, if you think about it, if you want to learn what would happen in certain scenarios, if you were able to create an artificial city full of AIs that can live their lives, and then you can put in what would happen if this happened, what would happen if this, and you could change the programming to have these different things happen, and you can see how people would react. Then you have real world applications for that, because they would react this way, and that's how it could start as a learning model for scientists to figure out how to plan roads, even, or if you plan roads this way, is how will the traffic jam goes, because you have the AIs there that are going to drive like we drive because they've been programmed to. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they've learned the same way we've learned and use large language models and large driving models, I suppose. And then they can city plan. Do you know, down the road when computers are much more powerful and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But that's why it would start. But then someone will go, hey, you know what? That'd be a great entertainment thing.
But even not being an entertainment thing, even if they literally just created a city simulator, put a bunch of AIs in there and said, let them live out for a year and see where in a year's time do we need to be planning for road infrastructure.
Yeah.
Except those AIs are now living in a simulation. And when we say let them live in it for a year, you can speed up time on the computer so that actually you'll get the result back in 5 minutes.
Yeah. But to them,
time will have gone. Yeah. And Black
normal.
Mirror has done had half a dozen episodes on
they?
this. Yeah. But yeah, and I mean, the one thing that makes me die, right, is people who are talking about the simulation theory. I can't remember. There's some famous physicist guy who says, nah, I call bullshit on that because what computer would have enough compute power to run a simulation of this? But the whole point is, that's like somebody, you know,
in the Stone
500 years ago saying, oh, now who could travel, you know, across the continent? Sure, that would take months.
Yeah. Can I
technology you
rephrase
have
what
then.
you're saying there? Yeah. Can I rephrase? So in other words, because my aim for this episode is for the ideas that we're talking about to be really clearly transmitted across. So when we talk about the simulation theory, we're not saying that in next year or later on this year or in 2 or 3 years' time. We're talking about, let's say that civilization we last for another, in 100 years, how will computers be? You know? In 1,000 years, how will computers be?
Yeah, you're probably talking closer to thousands of years. Rather
No,
than
but I think you're actually missing a trick here.
No, wait.
Go on.
But this is the way I see it. In other words, it's some time in the future that when the computing power is better. It's like, it's the thing that guy said, that physicist was like, haha, I gotcha, computers aren't good enough nowadays. It's like, of course they're not nowadays, but there was a time when, you know, when computers were not as good as they are today. Like, we're always getting better at everything.
I think I know what you're going to say as well, Mark, if you don't mind me interjecting.
Go.
Is that could already have happened. We could be in and one of the things about we're in a simulation now, it's not 2024. It's actually 3024.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, I meant to clarify that.
That was what I was going to say. That is the point.
That's the point. The point is,
but
they're running
that,
a simulation to figure out where did we go wrong.
But not only that, right? Nick Bostrom kind of hypothesizes that if, you know, some humans of the future, but again, maybe they're existing right now, running this simulation of 100 years ago, let's say I'm going to assume we're in base reality. And in 1,000 years, our computing is good enough that we start doing all these simulations. And we decide to do a simulation of how things were 1,000 years ago. And we simulate this world today. I already think that's small potatoes thinking, because that's what Nick Bostrom calls the ancestor simulation. And I presume once we get to the point where simulations are so good and AI is at the point where it's sentient and self-aware and you can put it into a simulation and it doesn't know it's there, that you're probably going to run ancestor simulations out of curiosity or whatever would motivate some person 1,000 years in the future. But the thing is, we could be a simulation created by an unimaginably alien being that is nothing like us, and the computers that they have are nothing like what we think of a computer. So for anyone in this world today to try to analyze the computers we have, the technology we have access to or will have access to in the future, you're already missing a basic first step, that if you can't deny the simulation theory, and I can't, even though it sounds ridiculous, and my gut tells me it's bullshit, but the logic is there, and it's irrefutable. And once you accept the validity of it, and you accept the odds are we're in a simulation, then whatever the hell base reality is, you literally cannot imagine.
Yeah.
Yes?
Okay, so I'm going to pivot the question a tiny bit and go, what kind of person would not believe this? As in, what kind of person wouldn't believe it, is it more a scientific person that wouldn't believe it, or is it more a religious person that wouldn't believe it? If obviously we don't know because we're not other people.
Well, yeah. If I was to hypothesize, I would say for starters, I don't think scientific or religious is the right grounds to break it down on. I think it's more like this is like talking about philosophy.
It's philosophy.
Yeah, and if you talk about philosophy, how do you know you're not just a brain in a vat?
Oh no, I know that, but
no. Well, I'm going to just say it just for the purposes of everyone listening.
Oh, you don't.
The answer is you don't.
Yeah.
And there's some sectors of people who are going to hear that and ponder it and go, interesting. I'll stow that. It's, intellectually, interesting. Somebody else is going to say, bullshit. Stop talking nonsense now and get on with it. The person who doesn't have time for the, let's face it, ridiculous sounding, preposterous idea that you're in a video game or you're in the Matrix, like the movie, the person who's very, and by the way, this isn't a criticism of anyone who thinks like that.
No.
That's a person who's very grounded and realistic, which is an important skill to have in the world today.
Yeah.
That's the kind of person I would think wouldn't really buy into this. But that's why I'm asking. I would love to talk to someone who doesn't believe it, listens to this, and then still doesn't believe it.
Well, here's
what's wrong with where does the theory go wrong? Because I can't see it.
Here's what I was going to say. To me, there's every single person in the world can be broken down in two ways. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Go on.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah.
What two ways though?
Well,
curious.
anyway, as in, I have this kind of biro. You can break everyone in the world down into people who have this type of biro and who don't.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? Okay. So
Fair enough.
yeah. So there is religious people and scientific people. A lot of scientific people are also religious people. Okay. But for a gross generalization, I'm going to say religious people and scientific people. But
that doesn't sit well with me.
No, it does not.
Nor me.
Yeah.
Nor me. Because wait till you see the rest of the sentence. Okay. I'm just trying to figure out what kind of person wouldn't believe this theory and why. And my point is, if you're religious, then by the very fact that you're religious, you believe that there was someone who made a simulation and this is the simulation. God made the simulation and we are living in it.
To expand on that, pretty much every civilization that's ever been has a creator myth.
Yeah. So
that actually ties into this.
That's my point. This is my point. Do you understand? So if you're religious and you're like, no, geez, this is ridiculous. There's only one God and God made this. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for agreeing literally with our point. Would you agree?
I mean, I guess that's a potential way of. I really don't know.
And then the second way is if you're purely scientific, and that's why I'm saying the gross generalization. It's like I'm just trying to just generally say, if you were going, no, it's like God didn't create us. We evolved from something. Then according to that idea,
yeah, if you're a scientist, it's the Big Bang. Yeah, that's when they hit the on switch.
yeah, and
that's when they typed run.
Yeah. But even then, it goes into, okay, if let's say you were a purely believer in the Big Bang Theory, and you're like, okay, so we've evolved up to this point in 2024 after billions of years when we randomly started counting 2024 years ago. So we're in this age. Again, that kind of person couldn't logically refute what we're talking about either, if you ask me.
See, I think if anyone's going to refute this, it'll be someone who just doesn't listen.
Yeah.
And that's the height of an arrogance of a statement to make. Anyone who doesn't agree with me, clearly they're not listening to me.
They're not listening. They need to listen more.
I'm very self-aware
that's
of
my
what I'm saying.
About myself, actually.
No, but at the same time, at the same time, it's just, when I heard this first, it kind of shocked me at the pure logic of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see what's wrong with it. I can't find a flaw. And you know what Elon Musk said? He would ask, once AGI, the artificial general intelligence, hits that superhuman level where, it can compute and figure everything out and knows all.
Yeah.
The first thing is he's going to ask it, what's outside the simulation?
Yeah.
But
that's funny.
That's kind of the logic part of the argument. Now, I'm going to give you my own gut part of the argument, right? And this is not Nick Bostrom at all. This is only just my own thing, right?
Okay.
Humans have existed for, I'm going to say, a couple 100,000 years, right?
Yep.
Hundreds of thousands of years. How many generations is that? There was hundreds of years where hunter-gatherers would,
Hunt and gather.
yeah, and even say, for example, when there was like rudimentary kind of farming early days, kind of, they invented the wheel and they had this plow thing for tilling the fields and whatever. But the technology that your great-grandfather had is exactly the same technology that you'd be handing to your grandson. Nothing changed for like tens of thousands of
Probably
generations.
99% of our human history things
Yeah.
didn't change.
And like literally everything that ever happened, if it was a graph, it's like flat and in stratosphere instantly.
Yeah.
It's like every technological change that's happened in the last, everything that's ever happened basically has happened in the last 5,000 years, out of hundreds of thousands of years. And of those 5,000 years, probably 90% of all this stuff has happened in the last, maybe hundreds of years, maybe 1,000 years. It's kind of like,
Say 1,000.
yeah,
Say
and I
1,000
know
years.
I'm roughing the edges here with the math and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
summarizing, but it's like, if you were going to run a simulation, because I'm assuming if this is a simulation and we have this history and this fossil records and things from hundreds of thousands of years ago, that doesn't necessarily mean that the simulation was started hundreds of thousands of years ago or billions of years ago. It could have been started 100 years ago at a certain point. It's like when you start reading a book. The book doesn't start with, in the beginning there was the
There's
word.
one book that does.
Actually, there is one book. But
The good book.
you start a story when stuff has already happened in the history of that story.
Yeah.
So my gut just tells me we are living in the most interesting time where all the interesting stuff is happening and all the big breakthroughs are happening and AI is being born in our lifetimes right in front of us right now. And the whole computer revolution that's literally changed the world indescribably in just a few decades, we're here to just see it all perfectly play out in front of our eyes. We're not anywhere else on the timeline of the hundreds of thousands of years, the billions of people who never got to see anything interesting. Now you're the person who gets to see everything interesting and is just on the front row seats for the most amazing developments ever.
What are the odds?
I mean, someone has to be, so I guess then that makes sense, right? But there is a kind of a principle in, I can't remember what kind of an argumentative style, that if your argument is that you're the special one or
The main character syndrome.
yeah, if your argument is that you're the main character, yeah, or you're full of shit.
Yeah.
I just feel like I call shenanigans on reality kind of based on that as well, and that's the most unscientific thing. But it's like, yeah, no, maybe this is all just happening right now, and I
And this
happen
is-
to be, or
That's
we're in a
why I'm on the
simulation
fence.
and we're living the interesting bit.
That's why I'm on the fence. That whole thing. That's very well put. And and that's why I said at the start, I am on the fence. I don't think we're in a simulation because it just seems so ridiculous. But yeah, maybe we are.
But I mean, again, do you really believe that you are now on a ball of dirt that's spinning around 1 trillion nuclear bombs all blowing up at the same time, floating in the sky, sending us heat to keep us warm?
Yep.
I mean,
Yes.
That's
that
very-
seems cromulent to you.
Yeah. It's
I guess. I mean, I believe it. I'm not in any way disputing this. I'm not, a science physics denier.
Yeah.
But at the same time, really,
Yeah.
you're telling me this, and I have to, And at the same time,
And on top of that, we're tiny and insignificant. Which, we are. We
Yeah.
literally are. When you take in the size of the universe, we're tiny and insignificant. But man, we could be in a simulation.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting, yeah.
But the funny thing, another funny thing that I thought as well is just a point someone was making about the whole simulation thing is that we look at it every day. Like when you go to click to send an email, you're looking at a simulation because that's not email. Isn't you typing whatever it is and send? Because that's what you click and that's what you type and that's what happens. But email is actually a load of electrons and binary code and resistors and copper wires, and that's what email is. Behind the simulation. And I thought it was a really good way of kind of showing it. Like, it's like we can't see the truth. And I think there was a guy who was looking into this and he got mathematicians and stuff to look at it. Is that we can't see the truth because there's is mathematically zero possibility of seeing the truth. And it's all tied into that, and it was fascinating. I'm not doing it justice. The guy's called Donald Hoffman, and he's definitely worth looking into because it's
Yeah,
it's
I know
very
the guy, yeah.
really really interesting, and I 100% do not have the intellectual capabilities to re-verbalize what I listen to when I listen to him. It was fascinating, but that was part of it. Is that when you click on your email, you're looking at a simulation.
Yeah, true.
And again, I suppose video games are the same. You're looking at you're. It's like the Matrix line. I know you just see those green wiggly lines, but I see blonde.
Oh
brunette.
yeah.
We look at the video game and we see car. We're driving the car. We're flying the airplane, whatever it happens to be. But in reality, it's just numbers.
Yep.
Which is and lines of code.
Yeah, that's a whole other space that I'm not going to go into. But like, I work in IT. Computers are my life and my passion, and what I've always been interested in. Even when I was in college doing social science and sociology, it was like I would run home to the computer because that was just what I was interested in. And I know exactly how they work from the component level right all the way up. I know the code, I know it all. But then I look at a computer and I feel like, yeah, that's magic.
How the hell does that work?
No, but it feels like magic. I build a PC and you put in the graphics card and you know that it's electrical impulses running up a copper wire soldered onto a circuit board, and then somehow you're playing GTA.
But
It's like, how on earth is that real?
Then again, this is an aside. Doesn't much to do with any of that. I think a lot of stuff that I don't understand is magic. Like I remember myself and Paul McCallion were living together, and we both ordered graphics card on the internet, and they came, and the one in my name was on my PC. Paul opened his, has been damaged in transit. Paul, of course, is an electronic engineer. So Paul was like, "Oh, it's that resistor there or something. I can't remember." And he brought it to work and fixed it, and it was working.
Wow.
And to me, that was magic. Because if that happened to my graphics card, I'd be like, well, better send it back and get another one.
You see, I think what you're both touching on now is like, realistically, humans are pretty amazing.
Well, our simulated selves are.
Yeah, no, but
whoever programmed us.
Like the thing
top
is,
job.
yeah, if we were programmed, then what we have, we're programmed to think it's amazing.
Yeah.
When you
but
think
now,
about it.
The next question is, where do you stand on the red pill, blue pill of the simulation? If you could, would you step out of the simulation to see what the real is like?
Wait. There's one necessary follow-up question to that, Barry.
World 101 looks like.
Could you go back into it again?
Let's say, I don't know.
Okay,
you don't know.
Okay,
Do a deal with the agents. I will sell out my fellow shipmates and put me back in.
What I've written down here is, I said,
meat again.
just so you know where I stand on it, as I am Cypher. I want my steak. Plug me back in.
Yeah.
I want to be someone important, like a movie star.
No, didn't even say that, but just I want my steak. I want to be back in. I like this world, so
No, I wouldn't want to be. If I found out irrefutably this is definitely a simulation, here's the proof, and now there's the door if you want to exit.
Yeah.
I mean, no way, because
No way. Wait. Finish the sentence. No way. What?
No way would I leave the simulation.
Really?
Because if you do,
okay,
then
well let's give
put it
it
this way.
I'm going to give you two scenarios. So,
No, wait.
So if the first scenario is you meet someone who says, "Yeah, it's a simulation," you take this and you're out and you're in the real world and away you go, and that's it, you're out. Or so if that was a scenario, think about what would you do in that situation, but also think about if you said you can get out, but then all you have to do is take this other pill and you'll be right back in.
Okay, so what would you do?
Well, firstly, I'll just remind us all that just because I want to stick to the scientific kind of principles of the logic of this, if we are in a simulation, which I think the argument maintains we probably are, it's not just a maybe, it's not a possibly, it's a probably, then we're probably AIs in a simulation. So, because the whole take a pill and you wake up in the real world in your real body suggests, and maybe this is the case, that we are in the base reality as well. But realistically, it's like if you booted up The Sims in 100 years' time, where your Sims are interacting with each other and going to work and everything, and they're AIs. And by The Sims, I mean the Electronic Arts video game called The Sims, just for anybody to clarify. But they are just AIs. If one of them took a blue pill and woke up in the real world, how would they be in the real world?
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
No, but sorry for ruining your story.
And that's
But
done.
I just had to inject a bit of what Bostrom would say if he was here.
Yeah.
But if I could go
with the hypothesis then that we are matrix.
if I could take the red pill and see what it's like, and then take the blue pill and come back in again, you'd have an old peak all the same.
Yeah.
I would. But as long as I knew I could get back in.
So if you couldn't get back in, there's no way.
No way.
Okay.
If I had a choice to go and see the real, I would.
But if you couldn't come back,
Even if I couldn't go back.
So you'd never see your kids again. You'd
never see Linda again, never see the kids again, never see anything else again. But what I would see is a different thing.
This is a man who knows his wife does not listen to this podcast.
yeah, I know, or his kids. Okay, so I think I would, if I could come back, I'd definitely want to peek behind the curtain. I think I'd want to. I think if I couldn't come back,
and if you couldn't,
I'm happy.
Because think, you could peek behind the curtain. If you went out of it and realized, oh my God, this place is a hellscape.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm stuck here now. But you said something about this Hoffman guy, right?
Donald Hoffman.
Yeah. I think it was him who, and again, it's the same as you, I listened to a bit of him, and he claimed at one point that he had dug down. See, a lot of this, there's a lot of advancements in quantum mechanics, I'm going to say lately, in the last 50 or 100 years, that that reveal a lot of weirdness, I guess. Quantum mechanics is squirrely, because I'm just going to start at the basics first, right? There's two physics. There's what we would consider normal physics, gravity, inertia, all the normal forces in the world, like you drop an apple from a tree and it falls on someone's head and Newton figures out that it's gravity.
And then you're done for aggravated assault. Go on.
But that's normal physics, right? But then they started, when you really zoom in with your tiny electron microscopes, you start seeing the world at the most microscopic level, and you start seeing another layer of reality. Now, this isn't simulation theory. This is fully accepted physics in the world of today that's acknowledged as absolute truth. So now we have, I guess, the macro layer physics, and then we have the micro layer physics called quantum mechanics. The problem is, both those physics, which are, part of the same equation that explain the world today, they're incompatible with each other. There's things in the quantum level that don't make sense for the normal physics. So already quantum mechanics is screwy, and it's internally consistent within itself mostly, but doesn't add up, I guess, to the world that we know. So the big pursuit of physics today is what they call the grand theory of everything. It's like one unifying theory that will explain all of physics, both the quantum and that.
Connects the two.
And it's so far apart, I can't even imagine how they could ever get there. But this guy, Donald Hoffman, was saying that he had got to some micro level of quantum mechanics. This is, the whole superstring theory and all that kind of stuff, where he was able to actually see what he called computer code. Now, I don't know how accepted that was, and I think he even himself kind of recanted it later. But ultimately, if you go to the quantum level, there's some things that are a bit screwy and weird. Have you ever heard of Schrodinger's cat?
Yes.
That's a thought experiment by a guy who said, put a cat in a box, put a little nuclear decaying particle in the box beside the cat, and at the macro, this is a perfect example of why quantum mechanics doesn't make sense, and yet is 100% real and true physics that's actually, valid. Again, we're not talking about simulation theory here. You have the cat in a box in the real world, say, and you put it's a radioactive decay thing, but let's say a poison beside the cat. In an hour, you check. Either the cat will be dead or alive, right?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. And that's at the macro level, that's basic science that makes sense. But at the quantum level, it is possible for the cat to be dead and alive. Simultaneously, the cat is in both states. And it will remain so until you open the lid and look. But the minute you look,
until you observe it,
it's either dead or alive. It goes into one state or another. Now that's stupid, and it doesn't make any sense at all. But I think Erwin Schrödinger, when he made this thought experiment up, was trying to elaborate how this is an example of why quantum mechanics, there's something wrong with it, because it doesn't make sense. But it's quantum mechanics, and that's what it is. Now, have you heard of the double slit experiment?
No.
No. This is a quantum mechanics
seen the
thing
video.
again, right? And I'm going to just I brought a pen and a paper today because I want to show you, right? Let's say you have a piece of cardboard and you cut a line in it. So now there's a vertical hole in this sheet of cardboard. And you have a machine here and it spits electrons into this, well, at this sheet of cardboard. Some of the electrons will go through this slit and hit the wall over there.
Yeah.
And all the other electrons will be blocked by the cardboard.
Yeah, makes sense.
So what will happen is you will see a vertical row of where the electrons hit the wall, right? Now, I'm sorry for people who are listening and can't see this, and I'm doing it. It's a horrible job of explaining it. I don't think it's possible to explain. But ultimately, if you can imagine a vertical slit in a sheet of cardboard and you spit a load of electrons on it, the slit electrons will go through it and you'll have a vertical row of electrons that have hit the wall in the back. Makes sense. Now, if you put a wave, not a particle, a wave toward the slit, the wave will come out the other side, but because it's a wave, when it goes through the slit, it will kind of start expanding again. And when it hits the wall, you won't see a perfectly vertical slit of electrons. You'll see it kind of spread out a bit. It'll be thicker in the middle, but spread out a bit. Again, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Now, that's the single slit experiment. Make two slits in the same sheet of cardboard instead. When you shoot the wave at it, the wave goes through, but because the wave expands when it goes through the slit, essentially the spray on the wall doesn't add up. And they concluded, that's because it's a wave, and the wave is essentially, because there's two waves now, because there's two slits, those waves are bumping off each other. So they kind of concluded, that's an interference pattern. It's not like a thick row of electrons. It's sprayed all over the place because the waves hit off each other. But when you shoot electrons as particles through the two slits, the long and the short of it is the dispersion pattern, which you would expect would be two vertical rows on the wall, are actually sprayed out all over the place as if they were waves as well. And they couldn't understand why. So they thought, maybe that the electrons are somehow, once they go through the two slits, bumping off each other or something. So they put a little detector. The first thing they did, so they shot the electrons one at a time, and only one at a time. They'd shoot one electron, wait for it to go through, shoot another one, so that the electrons, when they went through the two slits, weren't possibly bumping off each other. They were still doing the wave dispersion pattern, not the particle pattern you'd expect. So they weren't able to explain this, so they got a little detector that was able to see the waves and the particles and all that kind of stuff. And this is where things got really screwy. Because when you shoot a particle through the double slit, the results were looking as if it was a wave, even though it was sent as a particle. But when you put the little observing thing to watch the particles go through the double slit experiment, they acted as if they were perfectly particles behaving exactly as you'd expect.
Somebody watched them so they straightened up and flew right.
Literally, yes.
What?
And it
Sorry,
doesn't
for
make
those
sense.
of you listening and not on YouTube, I was surprised Pikachu face.
Yeah.
Like, what?
It's one of those bits of physics that's suspicious and
That
doesn't
is
make sense.
That is deadly suspicious, isn't
And
it?
what they actually managed to do is, if you leave the observing thing there, but turn it off,
Yeah.
then they act like waves. But when you turn it on, they straighten up and fly right and act like particles again.
Did they try getting the observer to look away and whistle?
No.
Sort of go,
No. But you know what else they did? They did something different. They shot a particle through the double slit experiment again and waited until it had traversed
I was going to
through
say,
it,
yeah, once or two,
and then turn it on. And then it would become a particle again. Which means if you hadn't turned it on and it had already gone through the slit, it was acting like a wave, you turn on the observing thing, it immediately collapsed down into being a particle. Like, that I know quantum mechanics doesn't make sense, and a lot of quantum mechanics stuff doesn't. But this is almost like you've caught
the simulation.
You've caught the simulation doing some shenanigans.
Yeah.
Right there.
The programming doesn't want to be observed, or the programming has something in it that it's supposed to behave this way, and this is happening, and that kind of shows it's a program or it's a simulation.
Exactly. That's kind of
that's something else I saw that they're trying to find measurable changes that will show them this is a simulation.
Yeah. So I think you quoted Hoffman there as saying that it's one of these unknowable things. I actually don't necessarily rule it out as being unknowable.
Currently unknowable.
Oh, currently, yeah. But I do feel like if you keep digging under the bonnet of the fundamental mechanics of the universe,
the worry though is I'm not really worried about it, but the worry would be, air quotes, they pull back the curtain a little bit too far and go, we figured out what it was, and then somebody who's running the simulation goes, they figured it out, switch it off.
Turn it off. Yeah.
Start up simulation 77241B, 77241A, failure.
That's literally, Barry, what the Matrix is about.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. They'd reset it.
As in, they're in iteration number, since they started counting, he said,
I think it was number 6.
Iterations, they were number 6.
So yeah, that's the thing. If you dig a little bit too far,
just
switch them off.
Yeah, but there's definitely
you've got 2 more weeks before you have to hand in your science experiment. Glug. So that's interesting.
Do you ever, like, there's a Chinese deist thinker called Zhangzi. That's Zhangzi. And he said, how do I know? So basically,
is he the dude who thought he was in a butterfly?
He said he went to sleep. He this is ages ago. Okay. Like, he went to sleep and then he woke up and he had a dream that he was a butterfly. And then when he woke up, he said, how do I know I'm not a butterfly still?
Oh, yeah.
Dreaming that I'm a man.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah.
That does make sense. And especially, like, essentially all a dream is a simulation. And when you are in a dream, now some people do lucid dreaming, in which case that kind of doesn't apply here. But like when I'm in a dream, I don't know I'm in a dream. So that makes perfect sense to me when weird things happen in the dream. Yeah. And I guess it's equally believable that this world is some kind of a techno equivalent of a dream.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
Sure does. It's like you were saying at the start. It's an incredibly interesting thought experiment to think about it, like, and it does make your brain sort of shit itself a little bit trying to get your head around it as well. It's super, super interesting. But yeah.
I think the logic is there.
That's it. One last thing before we finish up here. Linda was saying something interesting that she was in. Now, Linda isn't saying this as a thesis or as a kind of a measurement of her person or anything, but she was saying that she was in England at a meeting, and she said there was an interesting picture on the wall in the hotel that they were staying in. There was an interesting picture on the wall of a container ship. Okay, which is a weird kind of thing. Container ship.
Unless you're in a container ship company.
It wasn't a container ship company. There was this picture on the wall of a container ship. And then we came home and we watched a random episode of Bluey. And on Bluey, they looked out at the sea and there was a container ship. And Linda was saying, isn't it interesting how some things seem to repeat themselves? Like, the way you haven't seen something for ages and then you see it twice, you don't hear of anything, then you hear about it all of a sudden loads.
Or how often have you had a conversation with someone where you've said, I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
But have you heard of the Fibonacci sequence?
Yeah, Dan Brown.
Okay, well,
it's in the Da Vinci Code.
I actually read that book when it came out, but I can't really remember.
Yeah, so the Fibonacci code's in that. Okay, the Fibonacci sequence is in that.
I'm not going to reference that simply because I don't remember. But it's apparently there's this pattern, and it's not just a pattern but it's got measurable mathematical properties that you can proportionally, objectively measure, and it's found everywhere in the universe, from nature, like something as organic as plants growing and something as massive as spiral galaxies and stuff, all have the same kind of proportional pattern, I guess,
Yeah.
ingrained in them. That's another, I guess, another argument that one might make. See, the universe is built and designed, and they've copied and pasted the same
pasted the
template
code,
all
yeah.
the way through, kind of thing. And the only thing is, and the reason I'm saying it now is, there is a human tendency to see patterns in
There is, yeah.
things. So, like, you see a container, and then you go home, and hey presto, there's a container.
Or the mad thing
Or-
is, if say for example you start hearing a clunking sound coming from your washing machine, and you think, oh man, I'm gonna have to replace that washing machine, and then you're like, man, I just thought I needed to replace my washing machine, and suddenly I'm seeing ads for washing machines everywhere I look.
Well, that's probably your phone spying on you.
Well, it could be, but
Thanks,
like
China.
not, like you pick up a newspaper and,
No,
and
I
you
know what you
open
mean.
it
Yeah,
and
yeah,
boom,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
ads
yeah,
for washing
yeah.
machines. But that's again, that's your brain. That's your brain doing that. And it could be the simulation, but it's
Yeah.
it also your brain going, oh, so you're going to need information on washing machines. I'll make sure to point them out to you when you
Yeah.
see them. They've always been there,
Yeah.
but you never took any notice of them because you
Did-
didn't need a washing machine.
Did you ever? That's interesting. Did you ever, Mark? Do you remember morphic resonance?
Yes.
Remember that term?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain that, because that would also back up the
Well,
simulation?
For starters, I'm not sure, and I'll tell you what I've heard of it. Morphic resonance is this idea that all humans are interconnected mentally. And I will say this, right, because at the time I heard this first, I thought, well, that's obviously bullshit. But actually, there's so much more quantum behavior that happens in the human brain that they're analyzing now and identifying. So they're starting to kind of question, maybe...
It's funny because the first time I heard it, I thought, yeah, that makes sense.
It never made sense to me, right? So anyway, I'll say what it is. Basically, the theory is, if a person on Earth has a thought, then this connectivity between all the brains of all the people in the world, that thought is more likely to go into the heads of other people now. Now, that sounds silly to me, but if you were to say there's a kind of a inevitability about scientific progress, once science, like for example, who invented the telephone?
Alexander Graham Bell and some other guy.
And some other guy. There was no telephone for hundreds of thousands of years, and then all of a sudden, two people invented the telephone at exactly the same time.
Yeah.
But what actually happened is just technology was at that point already, where the next kind of probable, the pieces of the jigsaw were there, and the next probable pieces to be put together was going to result in this technological leap. And it's no coincidence that two people would do it at the same time, because they're existing at the same time when this invention was at the cusp of happening anyway. So I always put morphic resonance down to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then now I'm hearing a lot of quantum kind of, there's a lot of consciousness in the human mind that's being connected with quantum behavior that is detectable, measurable by science. So it's not just some
Because what
periphery idea. And I'm like,
what morphic resonance said is the test where I heard about it first said the research people that were like putting forward the theory of morphic resonance, they put a specific crossword in a newspaper, and then like X amount of people got past the crossword, X amount of people finished it. Then in a different place in America or London or England, I can't remember which way it was, they put the same crossword, but now more people got it. And then they got the same crossword again, put it somewhere else different, where the samples of people wouldn't necessarily have mixed with each other, type of thing, And so they didn't put it just in the times where everybody would have seen it, And then as they went to the different sample areas, more and more people were able to finish the whole crossword.
Yeah, they reckon it's also explains why we advance, because what might be a really difficult concept for our brain to fathom in this generation, because it's around and accepted. The next generation, they get it straight away. They're like, oh that's been thought about. It's already in the conscious, and then they're able to move it on to the next one. So the idea is that if our parents found it difficult to work with technology or learn how to drive a car, and the generation before them it was impossible, but we found it a lot easier, and our kids find it even easier again, and their kids are going to be even easier again. And that's one of the sort of generational. What's the word I'm looking for? Passing on of information and that's another example of morphic resonance, and why it happens. Like you were saying, the technology moving forward pretty much at the same time. Why is it technology moves forward at the same time? Why is it one country didn't put loads of money into universities and shoot ahead of everyone else. They didn't. Everything kind of moved, and that's because it's generational. It's passing down. It's as the program gets more advanced, the next generation of that program is able to handle more information, able to better understand the previous generations.
Because they say, like, from a civilization point of view, that farming was invented in loads of different places in the world at the same time.
Yeah,
Language was invented in loads of different. Now, when I say at the same time, I mean in the same
epoch.
the same epoch.
Yeah, but there's been so many epochs. So.
Yeah. Look, that's it. Is there anything else?
In conclusion,
No.
In
In conclusion,
Actually, in
it's
conclusion,
interesting. Think about it.
Well, in conclusion, after this, do you believe that we're in a simulation? Has this changed your mind in a way, Barry?
I am on the fence
Still. Mark?
would you be like on the fence 50-50 on the fence?
50-50.
Really?
Yeah, I'm still. I mean,
I mean,
it's like you were saying. You said a few times it's a probability rather than a possibility.
yeah.
But I accept it as a possibility rather than a probability. I just think.
I mean,
it's
honestly, for
possible,
me,
but-
50-50 seems strangely high. But then also, when I think, well, but look at the logic, then it seems strangely low. So it's like,
It's
I'm
quantum.
equally
It's
surprised.
quantum. That's the problem. I'm on a quantum fence. That's where I am. I'm literally I'm on a quantum fence.
What I think is,
We won't look.
Yeah, I'm
What-
Schrodinger's. I'm both yes and no.
yeah. What I think is that ridiculously, I think we're not in the first simulation yet. But I think it's illogical to assume this won't happen in the future.
Then, but you see, I think that's the
I mean,
whole
that's a
crux.
cop-out.
No, but that's the whole crux of Bostrom's argument is, if you accept that this is inevitable to happen,
Yeah.
then
It's happened, and
why
you're in
do you
it.
think that you
Oh, no,
are in
no,
the base reality?
that's it. Because when I touch
That
the
is
table,
illogical.
it feels real. That's it. Oh, no, I absolutely
But if you're
agree.
a brain in a jar,
Yeah.
the table's still going to
Yeah.
feel real.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, and I mean, again, my answer is the same. It feels so ridiculous to me that I can't believe it, but then also the logic is so sound that I can't refute it.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, that's there.
It's like that T-shirt I had of the dog that was turning around licking his own butt. And the tagline was, I can't believe it's not butter.
I think that's the
Thank
perfect
you.
ending right there.
Good night, everybody.
Okay, thanks very much. Like, comment, share, and definitely, as Mart said, comment.
Yes,
we would love
for
to
sure.
get comments on
I would
this.
really love to hear people's
Yeah, I'd love
take
to hear
on it,
people's
yeah.
opinions. Tell
Yeah,
us
yeah.
we're crazy or not crazy.
And we might see, can we put a link in the description to something about that double slit experiment? Because I'm very conscious of the fact anyone listening, in fact, probably even people looking on YouTube, because my hand gestures to indicate.
Do not
I know it
Google
was hard to
double
follow.
slit.
We'll put the link in the description so that there'll be no accidents.
Yeah.
or typos.
Okay, guys, that's it.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
bye. Boom.